Normally on these episodes, I start by introducing a Bible passage that's bizarre, perplexing, or just plain weird. But we are reaching a milestone of 100 episodes, and I thought I would take just a step back this time and tell you the story of why I am such a weirdo, why I like digging into the weird stuff in the Bible, why I think the weird stuff in the Bible matters. And it all starts with a crazy experience that I had in college when my friend got possessed by a demon and it started speaking to me. Because from then on, my life was never the same. My Christian walk was never the same. And I probably wouldn't be doing this podcast right now if it wasn't for the story that I'm going to share today. And just a warning in case you have got any kids around, and in case the episode title didn't clue you in, the story today, it's a little bit dark and scary. Like, it literally happened on Friday the 13th. But if you think you can handle it, grab some popcorn, and let's get weird. Welcome to Weird Stuff in the Bible. This is Luke Taylor, and today is actually not episode 100. This is episode 99, but episode 100 is already recorded, it's edited, it's in the tank, and it's an interview with Pastor Michael Miller of the Remnant Radio podcast. Michael is going to help us put to bed this question: can Christians be possessed by demons? And that will literally be the name of that episode, so tune in next week. You will find out the answer. It's a fantastic conversation. It's like 30 minutes long, and it is packed to the brim with deep insights. You will want to listen to it twice. It's really that good. But for today, I want to tell you about an encounter that I had while I was in college. And this event happened in, I want to say it was 2008. Now, in college, I occasionally would visit a Christian group or club on campus. It was called the Baptist Student Union. And I guess it was kind of like an outreach to college students. They would have Bible studies. They would have a meal gathering once a week, some other events throughout the year as well. It was a good group. And one of my first visits to the Baptist Student Union, during that visit, another student came and introduced himself to me, and we became fast friends. I'm not going to use his real name here. I'm going to call him Brad. And so my first college was a community college. It had maybe a couple thousand students, and it was a small campus. And so Brad and I would cross paths all the time. We had some great conversations. They were sometimes of a spiritual nature, usually about other things. He was more involved with the Baptist Student Union than I was. And so we would attend the Bible studies together, or we'd play air hockey together. Like, this wasn't a really deep friendship, but we just kind of hit it off rather well. He was very personable, and he graduated at the end of 2007. And so I was sad to see him move on. I may have called him once or twice in the months afterwards. This was still in like the early days of texting, and I really didn't like texting when it first became a thing. Like, I was really slow to adopt texting. I was strange about it. I was like, why would I text somebody and when I can just use my phone to call them? You know, it seemed like working backwards to me. I don't know why I thought that way. Now I text people all the time. But, well, here's another thing. Back then, I had a flip phone, and if you wanted to text in those early days, okay, the ancient days of texting, you had to use the number pad, and so you'd hit like 444-62933, 444-777-366. Like, texting was a lot of work back in those days. Okay, so anyway, I'm going on a tangent. I probably didn't text him. I probably called him. I want to say at least once, but I didn't really hear from him again until Friday, June 13th. So our town had a once-a-year celebration in those days, and it would go late. Like, I want to say it was a 24-hour thing, and I had been to the movies that night. I was on my way home, and I decided to stop by the celebration event on my way home. And so this was like midnight, and it was still going strong. And I was just there a few minutes, and then I got a call on my phone. It was from Brad, and he was very upset. He said some things about his mom that I won't repeat. In retrospect, it sounded like he might have been drinking or something. He wasn't super articulate. He was emotional in a way that I had not heard him be before. And he was kind of hard to understand. He asked if I could meet up and talk with him. I said, sure. There weren't a lot of places open after midnight. I didn't know where he lived. So I suggested Taco Bell. Like, that's the only place I could think of that I knew it was open after midnight. And so he said yes. And then he abruptly hung up on me. I jumped in my car. I started heading in that direction. And as I'm driving to Taco Bell, then he calls me again. He's even more upset. And this time he tells me that he's hearing voices. And the voices are telling him a lot of horrible things. And so I'm listening to what he's saying and I'm thinking like, this sounds really demonic. And so I tell him to call out to God. I say, tell those voices about Jesus, make them leave in Jesus' name. And he tells me he can't do that. And abruptly the call gets cut off again. Now, just as I'm about to pull into Taco Bell, he calls me again. He's very freaked out, like really freaked out now. He says he can't make it to Taco Bell, and he's out at the community college campus there in our town. It's a couple more miles away. And so it's somewhat a public place. I mean, it's pretty deserted at night. There's security guards and some random people who will go walking around. But because of what he told me about the voices, I was kind of wanting to meet him at a public place. But, this was my friend. He was in trouble. He said he needed help. So I said, okay, I will head that direction. I will meet you there at the campus. And I never hung up on him on these calls. He would always hang up on me. And so I'm on my way there. He hangs up on me again. At some point, I called my dad. I kind of said, hey, one of my friends is having a hard time. I want to stop and visit with him a little bit, and then I'm going to head on home. My dad was still up at that point. So he said, okay. So I'm heading off to the school campus, and as I'm approaching it, I get another call. Brad is still freaked out. He is still hearing the voices. The voices are louder. He is panicking. He said he was trying to drive to the college and he got lost. Now, that was kind of weird because he had attended this college for 2 years. He had grown up in this town. So how would he get lost trying to find the school? And this college, it had a lot of like foresty or woodsy areas around it. He tells me he's on one of the back roads somewhere there around the college and he can't find his way. So he's off in the woods, basically. And he asks if I can come and help him. And I'm like, okay, I'll try. He tells me the voices that he's hearing are telling him that I should stay away. And I'm like, well, listen, we're not going to listen to what the demons say. So if they want me to stay away, I'm like, well, that's all the more reason for me to go and help him. Now, guys, I was dumb. All right, don't copy anything about me in this story. I was a young adult. I was only thinking about trying to help my friend. And I thought, here's what I thought. I thought I'd show up and be a listening ear and pray for him. And, if there's anything demonic going on, I'll pray that the demons would leave him alone and that he would have peace. And in retrospect, okay, I never thought my friend would try to hurt me or anything like that. But in retrospect, I really wasn't being smart because every time Brad redirected me, it was to a more isolated place. Like first it's like, hey, let's meet at Taco Bell. And then it's like, okay, well, let's go meet on an empty college campus after midnight. And then it's like, okay, well, now I'm on this back road in the middle of the woods. And so every time I'm getting less and less safe to meet him wherever he's trying to get me to meet him. And then as I'm driving around looking for him, he says that one of the voices wants to speak to me. So I'm like, what does the voice want to say? Well, at that moment, it was like a switch flipped with Brad. And coming over the phone, the most inhuman voice that I've ever heard in my life comes across to me. This was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. Just to describe the voice for a moment, before I even tell you what it said. Like this voice, my blood turned cold. It was like a sense of evil entered into my vehicle. It was like the air around me grew cold. And the voice, I would describe it as kind of screechy more than anything. The closest thing that I could compare it to is kind of like how a raptor sounds on Jurassic Park. If a raptor could talk, what it might sound like, just that screechy noise that they would make on those movies. It only spoke to me for a minute or two, but this was like the scariest 2 minutes of my life. And it told me to stay away from Brad. It threatened me. It told me that it had control of Brad and that it was not going to let him go. And here's a direct quote of what it said to me. It said, "Stay away from this soul. This soul is mine." I think it said that twice, maybe 3 times on the call. And then it hung up on me again. Now, how was this demon speaking to me through the phone? Was it like controlling Brad and was it speaking through his mouth? I'll tell you, the voice I heard did not sound anything like Brad's voice. It didn't even sound like a voice that a human being could make. And so at this point, I'm a little shell shocked. Like at some point it hung up on me, and I just kept driving straight ahead very slowly for a little while. I wasn't sure what to do. Like I'm thinking, okay, if the demon tells me to stay away, then I should keep trying to help Brad, right? Like shouldn't I do the opposite of what the evil being wants me to do? Won't God protect me if I go try to help? On the other hand, I'm feeling a little bit in over my head right here. And I had grown up Pentecostal. I had seen demons manifest in people before. I'd seen them cast out in a church. And, but here I'm by myself. Like, what should I do? So I just kind of kept driving and thinking. And then I get another call. And I'm praying the whole time this is going on too. I'm like, God, what am I, help me, God. What should I do here? Then I get another call. And this was Brad's voice again. All the other times that Brad had called me on this night, like he sounded totally wigged out. Okay. I mean, for the last time he had called, there was a demon on the line too. He had been panicking this whole time. This time, whenever he called, he was completely calm. He was peaceful, serene. And all he said, as soon as I answered the phone, he just said, Luke, I would like to read you something from the book of Ezekiel. And I said, okay. And then he just started reciting some nonsense for like a minute straight. Okay. This was like, I didn't know the book of Ezekiel really well back then, but I could even tell back then, like, this is not from the Bible. It sounded biblical. It sounded like, King James style language or whatever, but I'm like, this is not something from the Bible. And he just recited it for like a minute. Again, totally calm voice. Like he said it as fluently as if he had recited it 1,000 times before. And then he hung up on me. And to this day, I don't know what any of it meant. So I called my dad and I updated him on what was going on. And he's like, you just need to head on home. And I knew that was probably what I should do as well. But I guess I just needed someone to tell me like that it's okay. So I started heading home. I got one more call from Brad that night and I just let it go to voicemail. When I listened to that voicemail the next day, it was just like this screeching sound. Like it wasn't even intelligible words. Again, it sounded like a Jurassic Park dinosaur more than anything. It sounded upset. And so I got home. But when I got home that night, I tell you what, I was sobbing. I was shaking. I told my parents everything that had happened. I didn't get to sleep until like 4 something in the morning because I was just like in terror. I don't know. Frankly, I can't. At some point, like around 4 in the morning, like I just remember I was just flooded with peace in my body. And I was finally relaxed enough that I could get some sleep. But that was a harrowing night. And so I'm sorry I don't really have more of a conclusion to the story. I'll tell you what happened next. I figured that even if it wasn't me, someone should try to help Brad. And so I called the director of the Baptist Student Union. I told him what had happened, like just everything I've been telling you. I could tell that when I told him this, he thought I was crazy. Okay, he thought I was crazy or just making it up. And he's like, well, that doesn't sound like Brad at all. And I said, well, I wouldn't have thought it sounded like Brad either. But, I know it was Brad's voice who I was talking to most of the night. But it all seemed really out of character for him. But this is what happened. And so the BSU director, he said he would call and check on Brad. And so he calls me back later. He says, Brad has no idea what you're talking about. And I told him that I heard it from Luke. And Brad says, I don't even know any Lukes. And so Brad basically denied that any of it happened. He denied that he even knew me. And that's essentially the end of the story. I haven't interacted with Brad since then. I could tell you a little about what happened in his life because I've kind of kept up with him from a distance. But if I went into all that, it'd start to give out identifiable information about him. I don't want to do that. And so I'm sorry I don't have more of a conclusion to this whole thing. Maybe someday I will. But everyone that I've shared this story with who like believed me, they agreed that he seemed to be luring me out into a remote area that night, and probably for not good reasons. Like I'm not sure if he would have tried to hurt or kidnap or kill me, but everyone counseled me back then like he might be dangerous for me to be around. So I just stayed away. I just always have. So I share that story because really the conclusion of it is that it greatly impacted my life. Like it sobered me up to God and to spiritual reality. That is not to say that I have always lived for God and always lived a holy life since then. Like I did do some knuckleheaded stuff in my college years after that. But this opened my eyes to the spiritual battle that we are in. Okay, nobody can convince me that demons are not real. And, even though it was just on the phone, nobody could convince me that I did not hear a demon speaking to me that night. I've shared this story with some people since then, and some Christians literally just didn't believe me. Like they thought I was lying or making it up, or that I misunderstood what was going on, or that maybe it was a prank call. But I mean, what I heard that night, what I felt that night, I just don't think that it's something that a person could fake. And then I did come across Bill Scott's book a few years later. It's called The Day Satan Called. And Bill Scott's story is a lot wilder than mine. There's a lot of similarities to Bill Scott's story. It started with him getting calls from a demon-possessed person on the phone, and that paralleled my story, including how the demons kept sending him back and forth to different places all over town. And Bill Scott's book really helped me contextualize some of the things that I went through. And so it was a real delight to get to interview him here on the podcast last fall. That was episode 46 that aired in October of 2024, if you want to go back and find it. But ever since that night in 2008, I have always also paid a lot of attention to the weird stuff in the Bible. The things that most people would just probably read and then say, I wonder what that means. And then kind of forget about it and move on. And I've always just wanted to keep track of those things and learn about those passages because, for one thing, I really have a conviction that everything is in the Bible for a reason, and that even if I don't always figure it out, that the answer is out there somewhere. Like God didn't put things in the Bible just to confuse us. We will eventually understand it if we dig for long enough. The Holy Spirit is going to lead us to the truth. And so I always track the weird things because they often connected to, I guess what I would call, or what I think of as spiritual mechanics, like how things work in the spiritual realm. That is a subject that I just always want to learn more about. I like how things work in that realm. How do our actions in the physical impact the spiritual and vice versa? And so I've tried to keep up with that. Another paradigm shift for me was in 2015 or 16. I was a youth pastor. I used to hold a Bible study through the summer while the kids were out of school. And one summer, for some reason, we decided to study the book of Jude. I think the reason is we wanted to just pick one particular chapter of the Bible and drill down on it for the summer. And Jude is a one-chapter book. And so we decided that we would just dig into Jude. But as I actually got into it, I'm kind of like, whoa, what is all this stuff in my Bible? And I would say that book kind of radicalized me, that the Bible is even weirder than I realized. And I was kind of nervous that summer because as I was reading this stuff and I'm telling them what I'm learning, I'm like, I'm waiting for a parent to call me and be like, what are you teaching my teenager? And so thankfully that never happened. But that's why I started this podcast a couple years ago it was just basically a Jude Bible study starting off, because that's the book that, as I say, the book that radicalized me. And so as I learned things over the years and as I built my understanding of those tricky passages, like particularly as I would learn more about how the spiritual realm works, I eventually thought, I should do a podcast on these things and share some of them. And I've learned so many new things since then too. I always assumed that demons were just fallen angels. I never realized that the Bible doesn't say that. It's just an assumption that we have. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad assumption, but I don't think it's totally accurate. Probably about a year ago, I would have said Christians can't be possessed by demons. I would say Christians could be oppressed, but not possessed. But again, there isn't a Bible verse that says that. And over the past year, I've kind of shifted my thinking on that as well. And I will let next week's episode answer that question for where I stand on it now. So again, next week is episode 100. If you're not subscribed, well, go ahead and get subscribed so you can make sure that you get that one. It's going to be great. And was my friend Brad, was he really a Christian? That's not a question that I have to answer. That's between him and God. But I wish I had known some of the things back then that I know now. Maybe I could have been more helpful to him. Maybe I could have done some things differently that night. But I can't go back and change the past. I have tried to learn more on these subjects so I can be better prepared for the future. And through the process of doing this podcast, I understand now more clearly than ever my identity in Christ, the power that I possess. I see more clearly my part in God's plan, that as a member of the church, part of my job is to reclaim this planet for Jesus. And so the past 100 episodes have been a part of that journey. And I hope they've been a blessing to you as well. Like, I don't know if I've got another 100 in me. I'll just keep trying to share what God shows me until I feel like he tells me to stop. And at the end of today's show, I want to give you a glimpse of what's ahead. But first, let's share a few mailbag comments. And so I got this feedback from Joe in North Carolina last week. Joe has been with us all along ever since episode 1. He was also with me on my previous podcast, which was a Bible study on the book of Ezekiel. And so I'm always glad to hear from Joe. He said this in response to last week's episode where I was talking about the sky monsters of Luke 21. He says, I was taught 50 years ago, both from end times eschatology and from hanging around the edges of the New Age movement, that alien abduction will be used to explain the rapture of the church. Note also Ronald Reagan's UN speech about aliens from outer space uniting humanity. It's weird, but so is the podcast. God bless you. And so thank you to Joe. One thing I've been surprised to kind of keep going back to throughout this podcast is how often aliens have come up. I made this podcast to talk about angels and demons and Nephilim, but we often see a lot of parallels with the UFO stories. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of stuff comes up more in the future. Another area that I've been fascinated to learn more about is how much the Bible teaches us on spiritual legal rights. Well, let me back up for a minute. We've been learning a lot this year that the devil doesn't just seek dominance over people, but he also seeks dominance on physical territory throughout planet Earth. And we've been learning about how he does that, how he stakes those claims and gains legal rights. But not only that, we've been learning about how to get the devil out of physical space and how to revoke his rights. And so I was very grateful to receive this email from a listener who is a missionary in India. And I won't give his name because he wanted to be anonymous, but he gave me permission to share this email. He said, I really enjoy your podcast. I can truly see what you're saying in your episodes about demons and fallen angels in the city where I live. You mentioned that you believe in that the gods people worship in specific regions are actually fallen angels or spiritual forces that control those areas. The city where I live worships one specific idol, and the festival for it is huge. The idol is Ganesha. I can clearly see the spiritual strongholds in the city and the demonic presence all around. Demon possession is very common here, and many people perform rituals in their homes that seem to invite demons in. Hinduism is such a dark religion. I believe that the idols people worship here are demons, angels that have appeared to people, leading them to create idols. In their own mythology, these beings are even called demons. It's incredible how spiritually dark India can be. But God is still moving in powerful ways. People are getting saved, churches are being planted, and many believers are understanding their responsibility to be disciple makers. I've always known about spiritual warfare and prayed for the city, but your podcast has helped me to understand that our world is even more spiritual than we think. It has encouraged me in my faith and personal growth. And so I just felt really jazzed up after receiving that email. I was encouraged that I was hearing more about how the gospel is the answer to the world's problems. Not just the answer to sin, not just the answer to the flesh, not just the answer to our guilt before God, but also the answer to evicting the devil from our lives, from our homes, from our cities, and winning them back for Jesus. And so to the person who sent that email, thank you for what you're doing in India. Like, I'm glad I could help you, but what you're doing is a lot more important than what I'm doing here. And so I appreciate people like you who are being a light in the darkness there. And I appreciate everyone who has reached out to the podcast, sending an email, saying that they listen to the podcast, that it's helped their spiritual walk. I've even heard from non-Christians who appreciate the pod. I've heard from lapsed Christians who say that this show helped get them back into their Bibles. I've heard from people who weren't Christians, and then they said they came to faith in part because of this show. And I tell you what, guys, like those emails, they mean more to me than I can even say, because and that's what keeps me going. So if anybody who ever wants to reach out with a question or whatever, you can find me at weirdstuffinthebible@gmail.com. That's my email. Or you can come to the website, weirdstuffinthebible.com. And I'm really excited about what's ahead. Sometimes I get into a theme or a topic for 5 or 10 episodes in a row, And there are other times between those themes where I'll just hop around to random topics. And we're in kind of one of those random times right now. But starting in January, we're going to begin a study of the book of Enoch. Particularly, I want to take you guys through Enoch's passages that intersect with the Bible. And I really struggled with this because this podcast, it's called Weird Stuff in the Bible. And the book of Enoch is not the Bible. So I'm not going to go through every verse in the book of Enoch, but you will learn the book of Enoch as we go through those episodes. But I'm only talking about the book of Enoch where it correlates with stuff that's in the Bible. And some are going to say, hey, the book of Enoch, it's extra biblical, and that makes it dangerous. But if Paul read it, and Peter read it, and Jude read it, and Jesus read it, then I think it's safe for us to read as well. And it's going to be biblical enough and weird enough that it'll be worth studying on this podcast. And so that's going to be in January. For the month of December, I plan to do a couple episodes talking about weird stuff in the Christmas story. We will take off the Wednesday of Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve will take off. I want to put out a special episode on New Year's Eve, and I want to analyze this question: are there dinosaurs in the Bible? And so that's what's ahead. In closing, I just want to give a note on spiritual warfare, and this kind of relates to that email I read a few minutes ago. So guys, I told you the story today. I had a friend who was demonized. I wanted to help him, but to be honest, if I had even found him that night, I'm not sure that I would have known what to do. I probably would have been putting myself in a dangerous spot. If you ever had a friend who was demonized, I'm sure you would want to help them as well. I hope this podcast, throughout the past 99 episodes, that it's helped you to be equipped for even extreme situations like that. Again, always be safe. Don't go off in the woods by yourself. Use some sense. But I hope this podcast maybe could help you in some of the things that I've learned and been able to share. Guys, remember this. Spiritual warfare might sometimes go beyond just sharing the gospel, but it will never be less than sharing the gospel. The gospel is that God loved this world so much that he sent his son Jesus into our mess to deliver us from our sins and to set us free from the enemy. Jesus said it himself when he began his ministry in Luke 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus came to set the captives free. He has come to bring liberty to those who are oppressed. And the Great Commission is not just to bring the gospel into every person, but to every nation. We are to destroy Satan's kingdom wherever his darkness lies. And the church is God's agent of that destruction. And if you're a Christian, you are part of that church. And thank you for being part of this podcast. So if you think the Bible is weird, I hope you're a little more weird today too. Thanks for listening. God bless you for sticking around till the end. And we'll see you next time on Weird Stuff in the Bible.